Welcome back, everybody. Fresh start. Last video posted up was the post-mortem on the first attempt at installing, well, not installing, building this small block Chevy. Ended in disaster before it ever got even started, with metal getting into the motor and doing a little bit of damage to some bearings. This was during the prelude pump up phase of the lifter. My oiling tool just shredded itself in the drill chuck and showered aluminum down inside the block down to the pan. Not cool, but we're past that, moving on. I've got the block cleaned and got the crank and pistons put back in it. Used some new bearings I had from a set I had purchased that was just sitting on the shelf, and replaced the ones that had any evidence of scarring on them, so those are all done. I did light sanding and resurfacing on the crankshaft. There was a couple of spots where there were some scratches on that, and I sanded them down with some 600 and then 1500 using the shoelace method and some WD-40, and got the crank journals polished up pretty good. I'm comfortable with where it's at. I don't see any problem with it, and that's where we're at right now. So going forward, it's just a new assembly of the motor, like from square one. I've got the rotating assembly in, minus the cam. That's the first part. I'm going to go ahead and get the camshaft lubed up, install it, put the timing chain on, and start building it up from there. So let's get to it. Okay, I got the crank sprocket back on there the way, as far back as it needs to be, I believe now. Let's go ahead and offer up the cam sprocket now again. Make sure this is dot to dot. There's my dot right there. All right, there she is. Now, again, we're going to just make sure these faces are pretty close together. This is still off a little bit. I may have to whack her a couple more times here. Thought she'd be back all the way, but not quite yet. Yep, the cam moved. There we go. I may just roll the cam one tooth to the right here. Missing you. Oh, no, I'm one tooth off again. Now I'm one tooth off the other direction. These dots don't quite want to line up. Why is that? bolts in there to hold that. Then I'll offer the chain up. Make sure you're lined up there. I'll be darned, she's still off. All right, I'm gonna have to think about this for a moment. All right, I think I got it now. The issue was the dwell that I said I had to take out. I actually had taken a little too much of the dwell out. So it wasn't the top dot that was the offset, it was the bottom one. So I rolled the crank through another 360 degrees, reestablished TDC, and now both dots are lining up just fine. So yay me. Now, I'm going to get this cam locked down. I'm going to use a locking plate on it. First, we need to get some Loctite, red Loctite on our nut bolt. If our bottle hasn't completely dried up on us. This might get messy. There we go. You can just dip the head of that nut right in there. All right. Cam lock plate here. Small dot in there. These get tightened down to 20 foot-pounds, like 100, 112, 100 whatever inch pounds. This top one's a little galled. I'm going to take it easy putting that on. It's just got some of the old Loctite on the front of it. Find the right socket here. Give me a light torque here, then I'll get my torque wrench out and finish that off. Set this guy up for 20. There. I'd say go crisscross, but there's only 3 of them, so no matter what you do, you're crisscrossing. Alright, there's that. Timing chain's installed. Amy. Alright, the next step, now that that's on, good tension on it, everything looks seated right. We're free now. If we wanted to, we could put the pan and the front cover on, but I'm not going to do that yet because of what happened last time. I'm not putting this oil pan on until the last minute, which means I'm going to get the head and everything else, push rods, lifters, rockers, everything set up before I button the bottom up. I'm not going through this again. So, all right, I'll get everything set up for that next part. We'll be slamming in some lifters and getting a head gasket on this. Guys, I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but I'm using the head mount for my GoPro. Now, on the lifters, when I took them out the first time, I made sure I put them back in the container in order that was they were shipped in, so I can put them in the same bore they were in before. Now, I just put a light coat of engine oil inside of each of the lifter bores there to pre-lube that. I am not soaking and pumping up my lifters before I put them in. Erring on the side of some other videos and people that I've seen to say that's just not the right way to do it, that you should set the lash and preload on a dry lifter, because if they're pumped up, it won't preload them. It will not preload the spring inside of the lifter itself. It'll just be a rock hard thing, and then when the lifter drops down under rotation and pulse, your lash will come back and you'll actually be loose again on it. So let me get each of these lifters going. This is the right hand side, so this would be a right hand, I don't know if it's intake or exhaust. I'm putting a little bit of that engine assembly, or that cam lube grease on the bottom of each one of these before I drop it in. Go in there. Next. Oh, wrong bore. There. Although this video is turning out, I have no idea how this camera's oriented right now. This could be disastrous. We'll see. I'm sure you'll catch something. Now, with lifters, you want to make sure they drop on their own. You should not have to assist them falling down into the bore. If there's resistance on them, they're not going to turn. And if they don't turn, see that one is just falling down on its own. If they don't turn, that's what's going to wipe out your cam, because it'll sit in one spot and just wear that one place under load, and it will not be able to spin around so that it's evenly wearing all the time in different spots of the cam. Plus, it's the little dome shape at the bottom. You can barely see it, but there's that little dome shape at the bottom of each lifter that is angled towards one side, front or back, and that's what keeps the cam pushed back in the engine. If you're doing a roller cam, you have to use a cam button to keep the cam from walking forward, and that cam button presses up against the timing chain cover, and that's what keeps the cam from walking out of the bore. With solids, whether they're solid hydraulic or solid lifter, it's the shape at the bottom of the lifter that kind of screws the cam towards the back of the motor under rotation. And that's what keeps it in place. All right, 2 more left here. All right, there we have it. All of our lifters are back home. Try to keep cleaned up as I go here. All right, with that done, we're actually at a point where I can put the head gaskets on, so I can get this stupid thing off of my head and put it back on the tripod. Curious how this turned out. We'll see. Okay, we're ready to put the cylinder head on. I have these Velcro head gaskets. 1043 is the number. These have a 4080 bore size, so that's 50 thous bigger than the bore of the cylinder. They are a 39 thousandths compressed thickness. They are not MLS, they're a composite gasket. These do have an up on them, so you have to pay attention to the orientation when you install them. They're not bidirectional. So I've just got these set here on the dowel pin. Now let me grab a cylinder head, make sure I get the right one here. I think these are bidirectional as well. Okay, I'm gonna rest this up on the dowels. Place it on, don't slide this in place. You really need to be careful to let it sit down instead of sliding it over, because this particular gasket has a layer of silicone around all of the water jackets, and if you slide it on, you will scrape that really thin layer of silicone off, and you'll have no sealing, at least not as the gasket was intended to do it. Good idea, good practice is to have a head bolt or two already in here to lock down so it doesn't slide off your dowels. I didn't do that because I don't do good practices, but I've got a bolt right here. I'm just going to get that started on. A few threads in it so this doesn't fall off. Now, the least enjoyable and tedious part of it, this entire engine build, has been prepping all of these bolts with the thread sealant, because these have blind water jackets, and putting this Ultra Torque on. Tedious and messy work. Not a big fan of it. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get these head bolts started. I'm going to cheat and use a drill just to start them. I'm going to put no load on with this. I'm just going to lightly get them going with the drill. Three sizes of head bolts. The longs go in the meat of the head inside the valve covers. The mediums, there's 2 for each side, 4 total, go on the ends of the insides of the valve covers. And then you have the shorts, which go down underneath the exhaust manifold. We'll go over the torque sequence here once we get ready for that. It's inside out crisscross. Pretty simple to remember. Billion guides online you can reference for a Chevy, or all of the manufacturer's head bolt torque sequences. Now, before I put this head on, when I was doing the block prep, I chased all these threads in the head, or in the engine block. Got all the crud out of them, made sure all these bolts started nice and good. So I'm not having any trouble putting them in now. Before you put your head on, make sure all your threads are cleaned and accepting the bolts you're going to use, or else you'll be in a world of hurt. All right. Two at a time to save some trips. I'm not pressing down with this drill. I'm just letting gravity grab the nut of the bolt, because I don't want to cross thread anything. Now, I know that not all of these bolts in this block are blind, in that they go through to the water jackets and you have to use sealant, but it's just easier to put thread sealant on all of them so you don't make a mistake and miss one and wish you hadn't. think I can get my torque wrench out. Get ready for that. All right. 3 steps, 4 steps. I keep saying 3, I always forget. It's really 4. The first step I just did, which is snug. Second step, and we're going to 70. The second step is 25 pounds, then you'll go to 50, and then the final torque with these ARP bolts is 70. You'll want to reference the manufacturer's recommendations of whatever bolt it is you're going to be using, and just end at that torque spec. But do it in stages. And again, when you're using a torque wrench and you have to use an extension, make sure your extension is pre-stressed, or it'll throw your torque readings off. 20 and 5 more. There's 25. Now cylinder 1 or bolt 1 is in the middle. Then you go 2 up to the right. 3 is down to the right. Then 4 is to the left. 5 is up. Then you'll go 6, which is down to the right, and 7. Then you'll go across to 8, up to 9, over to 10, down to 11, over to 12, up to 13, over to 14, down to 15, over to 16, and then up to 17. And these wing ones I got to work in because I didn't have my extension on when I was using the drill. This is what I was trying to avoid with the drill. All right. Now we're going to reset our torque wrench to 50 pounds. Same torque sequence. All right, now the final torque is 70. Now I like to pull through my final torque. Just make sure you've gotten every inch out of your wrench as you're using it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make sure this one's torqued. All right, now I'm going to re-torque one more time just to make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, that head is on. I'm gonna flip the motor around and do the other one. Alright, head gaskets. Let me go ahead and pull this cart over. I look like an idiot walking across the shop just to get bolts. That's the whole reason I bought the cart in the first place. Okay. Of course, my glasses just decided to shift on my head. Damn it. There we go. Bolts in here. Size for that. I might have. I think I did. Magnet time. Yep. Grabbed a medium bolt to go in the long hole. That's what my wife said. There we go. Sorry if I'm standing right in front of the camera right now. Just a little more considerate. I knocked it over. All right. Roll back to 20 pounds. Check this camera, make sure you can still see what I'm doing here. Yeah, she's a little off, but not too bad. 25 pounds. 50. And 70. Brace the motor a little as I'm doing this. Right, and then a check pass. Done. 2 cylinders heads on. Okay, I'm going to take a little break, clean up, get things ready for the next step, which is going to be to put the rockers on. So I'm about halfway to where I was before, which was 2/3 of the way done. Do the math, and I'll join you here in a few minutes.